the world who are struggling and going through hardship at the moment. I think kind of it goes without saying. So we, of course, have our amazing students in campuses across America who've been protesting now for over a week. Our brothers and sisters in Sudan, the DRC, our Uyghur Muslim brothers and sisters, the Rohingya Muslim brothers and sisters, and of course, Gaza, where we surpassed 200 days of genocide. So please, I invite you all to make dua, and I just wanted to acknowledge that before we begin. Without further ado, I will introduce our speaker. So as I said, kind of the topic of female speakers has been increasingly coming up in ISOCs across the country. So we hope to kind of explore the fiqh behind this in today's talk, inshallah. Just a couple bits to do with the Q&A just before I introduce Dr. Munir. So please, as we're going through, put any questions that you have in the chat. We'll address them at the end, but please feel free to kind of post them in the Q&A. I'll be keeping an eye on that. Can we try and keep questions as relevant to the topic as possible? A couple issues kind of came up before about talking about female kind of clothing and dress. That's not the topic of today's talk. Today we're specifically looking at kind of female speaking and the female voice. So if you can keep questions as relevant to that as possible, I'm sure Dr. Munir will mention he's got a series of talks that have been recorded on kind of other issues that are kind of beyond the scope of today's talk. So he'll direct you to those if that's something that you're interested in. Okay, so without further ado, to introduce Dr. Munir. So Sheikh Dr. Munir is a retired GP and past president of YM and ISB. He studies under Sheikh Abdullah Yusuf Al-Juday in Leeds, and he studied Ulum al-Hadith, Ulum al-Quran, Aqidah, Usul al-Fiqh, Maqasid, Sharia, and comparative fiqh. So he is more than qualified to address our topic today. So without further ado, Dr. Munir, I will hand over to you.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهد الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحابته ومن تبعه إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. I'm trying to avoid the light behind me. I don't know whether I can without disturbing the picture. Is that okay?
Yeah, you're okay.
After praising Allah and Lord of the world, sending peace and blessings on His Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I was initially asked to speak about this topic specifically because there was some mention of a woman's voice being awra, and that being a problem for some male students and perhaps others to listen to a female speaker either on stage or on social media, etc., giving any kind of talk. So that's one of the prime things we'll be addressing. It's strange because I thought we dealt with these kind of issue back in the 80s. I remember dealing with this. And we thought we'd put this to bed, but it's raised its ugly head, and I use the word ugly on purpose, as you will see why. So when we deal with this issue, when it comes to our Muslim sisters speaking publicly in front of male and female audience, and when you rebuttal the argument of the voice of a woman being aura or not, then they move on to everything's like higgledy-piggledy, and even from some imams and scholars who call others who have different opinions to them, they say imams and scholars in inverted commas. But in this case, I say it, especially with this issue, the spaghetti mix they do is then they move on to, oh, there's mixing going on. Then when you deal with that, then they move on to, oh, well, she's showing herself in front of male audiences and they're looking at her, and that is haram. So it's a mixture of things moving one to the next. Anyhow, so I'm going to deal with those three. First thing is, when somebody claims that the voice of a woman is aura, what does that imply and what does that mean? Because it has serious implications. And I say to you, very straight and clearly that this opinion is not an opinion which I see which has a legitimate ikhtilaf on it, where you can say, yes, some scholars have this view, some scholars have this view, and I have respect for those scholars who have this particular view. Not in this case. Anybody who says that a woman's voice is awra, this opinion is batil, fasid. It is rejected, it is false, it is against the Quran and Sunnah, and I don't mince my words. Okay, so very clear. Anybody who says that, what are they implying? What does awra mean first? Awra, the idea of awra or ar is, as the classical linguist said, anything which is, if you have, one of the meanings is if you have a defect or a blemish and you feel a bit shamed about it, you want to hide it, that is one of the meanings of awra. Another meaning of awra, something that you are shy to show, yeah, or feel ashamed to show. So hence it's linked with nakedness and exposing oneself. Yeah. Another meaning of awra is blameworthiness. So one of the Arabic terms, even nowadays, used when somebody's doing something shameful or bad, they say ar, meaning shame, shame. Yeah. So this is the meaning of awra. Here it means awra means nakedness or somebody exposing their nakedness. So when somebody says that the woman's voice is awra, they are meaning that a voice of a woman is like she is included in her nakedness. In her nakedness. That's how serious it is. So when they say it is awra, what does it imply? It means that despite Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala giving the woman a voice box like he gave the man as well, with which to speak and a tongue to speak with, and the different languages he gave and different expressions, they are saying, those who say her voice is awra, she can only speak in front of her husband and the mahram, like her father, her sister, her brother, yeah, blood uncles, and other women. That's it. She can't speak anywhere else. See, I don't think the people who actually passing this around, this comment, woman's voice is all right, they don't even realize what they're actually saying. That's the problem. But when you say that, that's what it implies. Yeah, it is haram for anybody else. And look at the world that these who claim this even, yeah, who are in the minority, praise be to Allah, around the Muslim world, from past and present, they're in the minority. They are going around in a world in which you cannot avoid the woman's voice, whether in Muslim lands or non-Muslim lands. The world is like one village now. Yeah, never mind on the social media, on the TV, on the screens, on the telephones, wherever you go. Yeah, a non-mahram woman's voice is everywhere. Even if you watch the Islamic channels or news from the Middle East, you go down the street, you go in a shop, you hear a woman's voice. You go in a supermarket, you hear a woman's voice. You go down the street, you go in the mall, you go anywhere you go, you'll hear a woman's voice, which is so. The implication of that is you're listening to haram all the time. Yeah, what kind of life and what kind of religion gives those kind of rulings which are impossible to affect? Yeah. That's the first thing before we even look at. I want you to realize what the implication of what these people who say woman's voice is awra are saying. Why do I say it's batil and fasid and completely rejected? Because it is against the Quran and Sunnah, this opinion. When we look at the text, yeah, there is no single text from Quran and Hadith which says the woman's voice is awra. In fact, we find the opposite. And when we look at an issue, we look at, of course, the text. The Quran is given the first priority, then authentic Hadith. And in the Quran Hadith, we have things which are direct and clear, in meaning, which is very little. Yeah. Others, and hence the idea of difference of opinion, ijtihad happens, where the ayat are those of that can be interpreted, and this is where ijtihad comes in, or part of ijtihad comes in, and people look at the interpretation of certain sentences and words in different ways. So, and part of that interpretation is done according with the maqasid of the Sharia, not just maqasid of Sharia without looking at text, yeah, as some people do nowadays, just use maqasid and think you can ignore the text. No, no, no. Understanding the text with maqasid al-Sharia and with the relevance of the ada, the culture of people, where we're living, etc. Yeah, the society we're in has its implications in it. So, actually, the people who reject the idea of woman's voice being awra, yeah, the woman's voice being awra, and you'll be perhaps surprised to hear that this is all the madhahib, the founders of the madhahib, Abu Hanifa and his followers, Malik and his followers, Shafi'i and his followers, Hanabila and their followers, yeah, all of these people, Ibn Hazm from the Zahri school, yeah, all of them are of the opinion. There was a few scholars from the followers of the madhahib who came later, yeah, who mentioned this idea of a woman's voice being awra, yeah, which was rejected by all others and people of knowledge, yeah, as being against the Quran. And they used the verse to reject it in the Quran, which interestingly, some used this verse, and I'll show you why, to also try and limit the woman from speaking or to speak in a particular way, implying that her voice can be bedazzling or sexual. Yeah, and this is one of the problems with some people in Islam, that they've reduced the woman, whether it's the voice or otherwise, just to a sex symbol. As soon as she appears or her voice is heard, they only think of one thing, and I have a real problem with that. So this verse that I'm mentioning is in Surah Al-Ahzab, and it is talking directly to the wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Surah Al-Ahzab, Surah 33, verse 32. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, after mentioning in the verses before that if the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, they have the honor of being wives of the Prophet ﷺ, being promised Jannah, but if they come, they are not like other women as well, because in the verse just before this one, Allah SWT mentions if they come with a fahishatin mubayyina, like adultery or zina, their punishment will be double. Yeah, but if they are obedient to Allah and His Messenger, yeah, obedient to Allah and do good works, then their reward is double compared to other women.
Year 13, like, last year 13. From our school.
Make sure their mics are off, please. Thank you so much. Sorry, Dr. Munir.
Right. So the ayah just before mentioning double reward as well. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya nisa an-nabiyyu lastunna ka'ahadin min an-nisa. O wives of the Prophet or women of the Prophet, you are not like other women. Wa in ittaqaytunna, and if you have taqwa, if you are mindful, what does Allah say? فَلَا تَخْضَعْنَ بِالْقَوْلِ فَيَطْمَعَ الَّذِي فِي قَلْبِهِ مَرَضٍ. Then do not do khudu' with bilqawl. Yeah, so that the one who has hope, yeah, the one who has an illness in their heart, that's talking about the male, they will have some hope of something wrong meaning from you. Yeah, if you do this with your qawl. وَقُلْنَا قَوْلًا مَعْرُوفًا. But speak, قَوْلًا مَعْرُوفًا means normal speech, right? Everyday speech, everyday what people talk about. Yeah, all that is good and that is allowed. So here in interpreting فَلَا تَخْضَعْنَ بِالْقَوْلِ, this is the issue here. Some people, and here's the problem with translations, as well as some opinions of mufassirin, which is a problem. Some of them said here, khudu' here means And they took it to the voice. That don't be, some even said, don't be implying to the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, and in line with them, after them, all women, they can be included, because you can't take the opposite of the ayah here and say, even though the wives of the Prophet are being ordered here you cannot use mafhum al-mukhalafa, which is the opposite, being that the rest of the women can go around speaking like this or speaking these words. So some of them actually implied that they shouldn't make their voice effeminate, saying to the women, don't make your voice thin and effeminate, yeah, but make it coarse and hoarse. In other words, change your voice to make it sound like that of a man. Yeah, some actually said that, which is unbelievable, because actually, this is back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the woman with a particular kind of voice. So in order for her to speak, except with her husband and the mahrams, when she speaks generally out there, why would the Sharia tell her to change her voice to make it sound like of a man? Yeah, that is not the meaning of that. In fact, that would be against the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, yeah, which is in Bukhari Muslim, where Prophet ﷺ said, La'an Allah, and in another version, La'ana Rasulullah. Yeah, that curse, Allah cursed, or the Messenger of Allah cursed, La'an Allahu mutashabbihina min ar-rijal bin nisa, those who imitate from the men, they imitate women, wa min an-nisa'i bil rijal, and those from the women who imitate men, they are cursed. That's not just talking about cross-dressing. It would include those who want to purposely change the voice of a woman to sound like that of a man. So that would be against that. So naturally, that's not the meaning here. Clearly, that's not. And that's why the likes of Hasan al-Basri, as-Suddi, the great Mufassir, and Qatada, all Basris, yeah, and all Tabi'een, and famous for their scholarship. Hasan al-Basri died 110 Hijri, and you're talking about Qatada being also Tabi'i, a young Tabi'i, and as-Suddi also from the Tabi'een, from a similar kind of time. They say that this means not to make, and here notice Allah SWT doesn't say فَلَا تَخْدَعْنَا بِالصَّوْتِ. The Quranic verse doesn't say anything about the sawt. Sawt is the voice. Qawl is the speech. It means the content and the way you speak. And here what they're saying is, don't be suggestive in your speech. Yeah? Don't be suggestive. And some actually said quite rightly, of the Mufassirin, they said, don't be speaking words that a bad woman or a prostitute would speak to a man. Yeah, she's inclining in a particular way. That's what this verse is talking about. Not speaking naturally. Yeah, that's the best interpretation of this. Not the idea that for a woman to change a voice to a man's voice. I remember when I was much younger, in the 80s, as a newly qualified doctor, I think it was 83, 84, I went to a forces conference, in the winter conference, and this was attended by the great Mujahida, Zainab al-Ghazali from Egypt. She came to address the audience, which was nearly 1,000, hundreds of brothers and sisters from all around the country, from universities and wider. And she addressed. And I remember one of the brothers, who was one of our teachers as well, I remember after she spoke, and he said, now, it's all right for her to speak. Did you notice her voice sounded like that of a man? I wasn't convinced then, as I'm never convinced now. But that's what people believe. Yeah, she's all right to speak because she sounds like a man. As though but subhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave even women different levels of different kinds of voices. Some sound more with a bass, some sound more thin, but generally it's different from the men. And she had a heavy voice, but she wasn't putting it on, and she wasn't changing her voice. Subhanallah. So that's the kind of, so here it's not talking about voice, the verse coming back to, it's talking about the speech you talk about. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually also, what's missed often by these people who are talking about the woman's voice being, or they don't realize in the verse Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that the one who has disease in their heart is talking about the men. Now, for me, the diseased person in the heart is the man who only sees women as sex symbols, whether he's a sheikh or not a sheikh. Yeah, diseased in their heart. Yeah, so the one who has disease in their heart, they may have some hope for somebody who's giving the kind of speech which saying basically come to bed with me indirectly. Yeah, suggestive talk. Quran is saying don't do that. فَقُلْنَا قَوْلًا وَقُلْنَا قَوْلًا مَعْرُوفًا. This qulna is amr. It is a command. Yeah. The other one, فَلَا تَخْضَعْنَا. Do not do that. Use suggestive speech or in a suggestive manner. فَقُلْنَا قَوْلًا مَعْرُوفًا. Speak. So it's ordering the women, in this case, the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, who were screened from the others because the wives of the Prophet ﷺ were never to marry again after the Prophet ﷺ's death. So they are a different ballgame, and they were screened from the rest of the non-mahrams from others, which is not the case for other women. Yeah. So even they are being told, and that's why the likes of al-Mu'mineen, Aisha radiallahu anha, is teaching. She's one of the greatest scholars from the Sahaba, teaching from behind the screen. And of course, Tabi'een and Sahaba others used to hear her voice talking. Subhanallah. Yeah. So ordered to, qulna here is an amr, ordered to speak as normal, everyday talk. Yeah. Assalamu alaikum. As I like what Imam Ghazali said, rahimahullah, the Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, in his Ihya al-Muddin, he said, وَصَوْتُ الْمَرْأَةِ فِي غَيْرِ الْغِنَى لَيْسَ بِأَوْرَى. And the voice of a woman, aside from singing, is not naked. It is not awra. Singing is a separate issue. فَلَمْ تَزَلْ النِّسَاء فِي زَمَنِ الصَّحَابَةِ رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنْهُمْ يُكَلِّمْنَا الرِّجَالِ فِي السَّلَامِ. The women at the time of the Sahaba continue to speak to men, yeah, whether saying salam or responding to salam, or to wal istifta, to ask for a fatwa, and to ask a question, a su'al wal mushawara, to take mashwara, consultation, and other things, yeah, and to answer questions like Ummahat al-Mu'mineen giving answers. It's, this issue has affected our society, and I blame our sisters partly because they seem to be convinced by this false opinion, yeah, and this is somewhat to do with our culture, that to this day I find it very difficult to get, never mind them, the sisters coming to the masjid saying salam to me, they will never say it, hardly 1% will say it. The sad thing is, if I say salamu alaikum to the sisters and they know I'm the imam there, less than 5% say wa alaikum assalam to me so that I can hear it. And why? Because they've got this baggage in their head that my voice, I can't speak. However, the same women and sisters are fine speaking to, well, I used to say to the milkman, but they're gone out of date now, with non-Muslim teachers, non-Muslim postmen, non-Muslim neighbors, non-Muslim, wherever they're working, they're easy, nice and chatty, good morning, good night, good evening. But with the Imam of the mosque, subhanAllah, we become as though we're extra muttaqi now. We can't trust him. We can't even say salam to the brothers. There's a mental problem here. Yeah, this is wrong. This is against Islam. Yeah? You see what somebody from the 5th and 6th century, Imam Ghazali, is saying about saying salam to one another, and the hadith of the right of believers, yeah, to have salam, and especially obligation of believers, that's men and women, to respond to a salam is fard. It's fard. Anyway, so this, I hope, clarifies for us from the verse itself, even for Ummahat al-Mu'mineen, to actually speak. An everyday speech, ma'roof here. Some people said talking Quran. I mean, Who goes around just talking Quran? Sahabiyat didn't do that. Yeah, some people live in a very strange world of their make-belief, actually, not in the real world. Yeah, or they try and pretend they're not in the real world. Yeah, so ma'ruf is used, urf, ma'ruf comes from urf. So what is acceptable and all that is good in speech. Yeah, good morning, how are you? As Mu'minin Aisha radiallahu anha said to Bilal, how are you, Bilal, when he was ill? Yeah, isn't that she didn't speak? Yeah, talking in the shops, talking with colleagues at work. Yeah, the idea is for men and women to avoid futile talk. Yeah, but also wrong kind of talk. Yeah, wrong kind of talk. So that's a different ballgame. That wouldn't come under ma'ruf anyway. And sisters speaking, of course, naturally, we're speaking about sisters in Islam standing up speaking about an issue to do with Islam and Muslims, etc. Yeah, they're not going to be just reciting Quran to you. Yeah, and some people have a problem with sisters reciting the Quran. Again, the baggage behind that is the same idea. Or her voice is. If you've got a problem with the voice, you're more likely to be under the category of the one who's got marad in your heart, as the Quran says. Yeah, you need to check that out. As a male, you need to sort yourself out. Okay. And if you feel you can't hear a particular woman's voice because it's actually doing something to you, desirous-wise, then the problem's with you. You should get up and leave. Yeah? Not make it an obligation for the rest to follow your opinion, which is fasid anyway. As personally, you can apply it to yourself and say, well, I can't cope with this particular woman's voice. It's doing something to me. Get up and leave, no problem. Yeah. You know, and these are the same people who are actually on social media. They're watching women speaking, singing, doing all sorts. They are at school, they're at university, they go to the shops and women are speaking. We have women lecturers, we have women doctors, we have teachers who are at university, at school, at colleges. Yeah. Well, what do they do there? They just want to have a go at the Muslim woman because she's speaking about Islam. Yeah.
Dr. Munir, sorry to interrupt, just that's the 10-minute reminder. That's
okay. Then they move into the issue of, it's mixing. And mixing in the sense that all brothers and sisters in the same place. You know, this whole idea of mixing, I refer you to a seminar done by Brother Ehtisham with yourselves. He's dealt with this issue, this false issue, ikhtilat, mixing, which doesn't exist in the Quran and Sunnah anyway. Sahaba and Sahabiyat lived in a mixed society. Subhanallah, they prayed in the same mosque with no screen, with the sisters and the Sahabiyat at the back and the men at the front. And when they used to have a lecture from the Prophet ﷺ, the sisters would be right behind them. We have some reports of them asking the Sahabi just near them in front, what did he say? I just missed that bit. And there was a natural interaction, as I've just mentioned before. As Imam Ghazali mentioned, yeah, and they talk about this mixing. And some of them are so ridiculous, and I wonder about the scholarship. I say, we nowadays have brothers and sisters on the same stage, scholars, and they say like this, scholars. Yeah. And when I look at his analysis, I think scholar. They say, brothers and sisters on the same stage, and they're smiling and chatting with each other. Right? Look what he takes it after that. Then they give high fives to each other. Then they chat off the mic, and then they say, my place or yours. And you know what goes on after that, brother. Subhanallah. He took from speaking on the same stage of a brother and sister, look where he took it to, all the possibilities. Perhaps they could slip on a banana skin and fall off the stage as well. Perhaps they should get on then. Perhaps, the roof might cave in as well. I mean, what kind of scholarship is this to say, and then say this is haram and prohibited? Based on what? Which evidence have you brought to say this is? It's a big thing to say. Yeah, as the great companion and student of Abu Hanifa, Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Shaybani said famously, he said, أدركت مشايخنا من أهل العلم من أهل العلم يكرهون أن يقولوا هذا حلال وهذا حرام إلا ما كان في كتاب الله عز وجل مبينا بدون تفسير. He said, I came across our teachers, our shuyukh, yeah, of people of knowledge. They dislike that they say this is halal and this is haram, except that which came sarihan clearly in the book of Allah, yeah, clearly, like khamar is haram, eating khinzir is haram, stealing is haram, yeah, that's very clear. Those things are made clear. They're disliked for saying that for anything else, yeah, which could have ta'wil or tafsir, which could be interpreted. Yeah, at best they would say, I don't like it. So if they can say, well, I don't like the brother and sister sitting on said, it'd be much safer, much better situation than actually doing haram and halal on behalf of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what are these people going to say? Finally, some say, oh, what about the sister? Or you're looking at her face, yeah, and we're told to look away from the face of the opposite sex, yeah. And they go back to the ayat in Surah An-Nur. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhalladhina qul lil mu'minin yaghuddu min absarihim wa yahfadhu furujahum dhalika azka lahum inna Allaha khabirun bima yasna'un. Say to the believing men first, I often miss this, that's men being told first, to control from their gaze. Men, there's some debate on it, but in the context of what's being talked about, the min here is to control the kind of gaze, from the kind of gaze, which is confirmed by the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ from Abu Hurairah and Ibn Abbas on lamam, on minor sin. That zina to ayn another, that the adultery of the eyes is the look. So it's the look of desire that you want to go to bed with somebody when you're looking at somebody. That kind of gaze Allah SWT is talking about in the Quran, to lower and to steer away if that comes, a desire comes in the look. Yeah, يَغُضُّ مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ, hence from the gaze. Not all gaze, as we used to say in the 80s, if all gaze for the opposite sex was to be forbidden, whether in hijab or not hijab, then we'd be walking around like this in the streets and bumping into each other, bumping into lampposts. Yeah, that's not the kind of society that's envisaged at all. Yeah. And same for believing women. كُلِّ الْمُؤْمِنَاتِ يَغْضُضْنَ مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِنْ. Yeah. So when it comes to looking, it's look of desire. Some say, oh, her face is showing. How could she? Now she's on social media, you know, showing her face, etc. Well, I'll tell you something. Yeah. And they try and peddle this idea that the majority of scholarship of the madhahib and the scholars from the Salaf and the Khalaf are of the opinion that the face should be covered of a Muslim woman. Actually, the majority is the other way around. By far, the majority of the way around. It is the opinion of Abu Hanifa and his followers that illa ma dhahara minha, as the Quran mentions, yeah, includes the face and hands are outside the necessity of covering for a woman. Abu Hanifa and the followers, Malik and his followers, Shafi'i and his followers, Ahmad ibn Hanbal in one opinion and his followers. In the other opinion, Ahmad ibn Hanbal, they exclude the face and they say she should wear gloves. Yeah, so the face is still out of it. And that is the opinion of Abu Thawr, who was around at the time of Imam Malik, independent scholar, not from any of the madhahib. That's the opinion, meaning the woman's face can be uncovered, and the hands of Al-Awza'i, who was a Shami scholar, a great scholar around the time of Imam Malik as well, independent. That is the opinion of Ibn Hazm. That is the opinion of Imam Ibn Jarir al-Tabari. I could carry on. Yeah, great. So all the madhahib you see are of the opinion that the face and hands, and that is the opinion of Abdullah ibn Umar and Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, from the Sahaba themselves, the scholars from the Sahaba. So, but to look, as long as it's not with desire, there's no harm in it. It's just natural. Yeah. And then some say, what about the woman? She's not covering her head. Yeah. And this here, I believe for a Muslim woman, it is obligatory, yeah, for her to cover her head. Part of her hair showing here and there is a different issue. There's debate amongst the scholars in regards to that. What they mean by وَلْيَضْرِبْنَ بِخُمُرِهِنَّ, as the Quran says, عَلَى جُيُوبِهِنَّ, indirectly it mentions the khumr, yeah, that which covers the head, not about hair, covers the head. Yeah. So from that, indirectly, and there's room for interpretation, and therefore it is not qat'i, absolute, but it is there. Yeah, and I believe it's obligatory. But it is to not cover the head is not the same as not covering the private parts. Some people try and imply that a woman who's got her head covered is as though she's sitting there naked like a prostitute. Astaghfirullah. These people have no understanding to say something like that. Anybody with any ounce of sense will realize that that is not the same as her showing her private parts, but they put it across like that. Some people will call women who a bit of their hair shows, they say she's like a prostitute. Na'udhu billah min dhalik, with these kind of facet and rejected opinions. Whether, in fact, a sister, a Muslimah, covers her head or not is between her and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you as her brother can't cope with looking at her, then you should get up and leave or keep your gaze down and listen. Yeah. You're not here as a judge on her. Yeah. You worry about yourself. Perhaps she wears the khimar and legitimately showing her hands and face, and you can't even cope with looking at her face because it's turning you on. Yeah. Then lower your gaze or leave the place because that's a problem for you specifically. Yeah. But not for you to make a judgment call and give a general fatwa that no women speakers are allowed to stand at the podium because we shouldn't be looking at their face and hands. Yeah, there's an allowance to look at their face and hands as long as, and majority of the scholars from the madahib said that. Yeah, some Shafi'iyah had karaha, dislike for it. Others all said it's absolutely fine in a natural situation to look at the face and hands of a woman, as long as you're not doing it desirously. Yeah. So I hope.
So were you just going to close up? Because I was just going to say we're just at time to start the Q&A.
Yeah, I was just going to finish.
Yeah, no
I
problem.
hope that covers some of the issues related around this topic, and the issues are wider than that, especially to do with the dress and what is the awrat of women and men has been covered in a series of seminars which I did some years ago and are available in more detail. We won't have time for that today, but they're available on YouTube if you look it up, inshallah, under chapter 25 under my name, inshallah. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم إنه هو الغفور الرحيم.
Thank you so much, Dr. Munir. Thank you for addressing that topic in so much detail and so thoroughly. It's definitely given me so much clarification and understanding on that. So thank you so much. So now it's over to the attendees. So again, thank you all so much for coming. Please start posting any questions that you've got in the chat, and I'll pose them to Dr. Munir, inshallah, and he can address them for us. There was somebody who mentioned while you were speaking, who said that they've heard the opinion that if you're a sister and not comfortable responding to the salam of a guy, so of a man, you can just ignore them. So I think that was talking about the idea of giving salams as being obligatory. I think that's on that topic.
I disagree with that. Who can say why? When the Prophet ﷺ said that a Muslim, one of the rights of a believer, yeah, and he didn't say male to male, female to female, is the right of salam. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it, وَإِذَا هُيِّيتُمْ بِتَحِيَّةٍ فَأَيُّ بِهَا فَأَيُّ بِأَحْسَنَ مِنْهَا أَوْ رُدُّوهَا. If you are greeted with a greeting, then Allah orders that greet back with something better or the same. So if somebody says Assalamu alaikum, Allah's ordering you, to respond. For what purpose would you not respond and want to ignore them? I can't understand why. Yeah, I can understand looking at the opposite sex, and having a chat with them. If it's doing something to you as a male or female, then you try and avoid that, situation, and especially khalwa, being alone. But to respond and say wa alaikum assalam and then walk on, what's the problem with that? So I don't think it's acceptable to say ignore him. That is against the sunnah, and actually it's against the Quran as well.
Thank you so much for clarifying that. Next question. So ISOC sometimes say that they don't allow female speakers just so they don't slip into dangerous territory. What is your response to them?
Well, it's a bit like the banana skin peel that I was saying. Yeah, you see where this particular person, this is where people, Allah SWT has put the limits. He didn't leave out anything for you to add. So Allah SWT said, don't go near zina and don't be in a situation khalwa with a non-mahram person where you are alone one-to-one, and in a locked room situation. Nobody can walk in and out, in privacy. That's what's forbidden. The rest of the situation, what's the dangers? It's public speaking. You're in a public place. You can't add to the religion and introduce your own sadd al-dhara'i. Where do you put the limits? I'm just putting the means to block so this doesn't happen, that doesn't happen. Allah and His Messenger and the Sharia already put that in place. You don't need to add to it as though Allah and His Messenger left something out. He didn't.
Thank you so much. I really like the way you put that as well. Thank you. Okay. So have you got experience in tackling this issue in ISOCs? And if so, how? How have you dealt with this before? For example, within ISOC committees. So this has been put to yourself, Dr. Munir, and also to Auntie Sarah, if you wanted to add anything.
Well, no. In the end, how to deal with it depends on which Islamic society is, on which kind of individuals you got there. Every group or society or committee is different, but you need to stand your ground. And if it's consultation, I find these things very difficult because people will bulldoze their way anyway, and you can say what you want, well, people will do what they want often, don't they? So you can only try, and try and make people aware. If people, especially some of our brothers, and I find that some of our religious brothers, actually many of our religious brothers, are so chauvinistic that it's like you're not going to get past that. They've stuck in their opinion, and they think that is the only right opinion. And look how it's become. I mean, nowadays you would think the majority opinion of scholars was that the woman's face needs to be covered. Hanafis have become, today's Hanafis are not like the Hanafis, not like their predecessors, not like Abu Hanifa and his Sahibain. They're not like that. They were people of Ahl al-Rai, people who thought behind the text and interpreted, more like Zahiris nowadays, who follow the superficialness of the text. You would think that the majority opinion was about the women should cover her face, but actually it's quite the opposite, like I told you earlier on. So that's what we're up against. People trying to be ultra conservative. Like one of these speakers who I was mentioning before, he was saying, what is this? Nowadays we got these people kind of Islam. What kind of Islam in some of these places? They don't want the traditional Islam. Look how he describes traditional Islam, which he's very proud of. The traditional Islam in which everything is haram and forbidden and there is fear of Allah. That's traditional Islam. That's a lie. In traditional Islam, everything is mubah, and that which is forbidden is only a handful of things in the Quran and Sunnah, brother. How dare you say in which nearly everything is haram and forbidden and with the fear of Allah? What about the love of Allah? There's hellfire and there's paradise. and nowadays, where they want to make things easy for them, Islam came to make easy, to remove the shackles what people had put on themselves, especially of the people of the book, the yokes that, and the Prophet was sent as a mercy to creation. Yeah, inna hadha dina yusr. Surely this religion, this way of life, is easy. وَلَنْ يُشَاءَ الدِّينَ أَحَدٌ إِلَّا غَلَبَهُ. And there's nobody who goes strictly in this religion that it destroys them, overtakes them. They can't cope with it. This is this religion.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Munir. And also, Auntie Sarah, you've been invited to answer this question just from a perspective of a woman kind of approaching ISOCs, if you wanted to add anything.
I think it just needs, thank you so much for the money. I think we need a culture shift. We need to create other lanes and show another example and hope that they follow and take it on. Like seminars like this, we need to disperse the knowledge from here. But if you look at some of the activities that ISB campus has organized, we've had so many amazing female speakers. And it seems to me that it would not just be our women who would be missing out if they didn't hear these female speakers. It would be our boys as well and our men. Sarah Joseph spoke at one of the masterclasses. She got amazing feedback. We've got, look at the poster that Iman just shared. We've got Shanaz Banglawala speaking on policy and research to inspire the next generation. The next networking dinner, we've got Dr. Shamila Zulfiqar, who's been to Syria. She's been to the Rohingyas. She's been to Gaza, and she's coming to speak about being a humanitarian doctor. So women speak in different capacities, and if we don't hear, we will lose out. So to me, it's about creating different cultures, challenging where you can without it draining you completely, and keep raising the issue. Like we've got Sheikh Munir doing that, but he can't be everywhere. We've got to now take the nuggets that he's taught us and spread them.
Thank you so much, Auntie Sarah.
It's such a sad situation if we think that the sister and the woman coming to speak is coming to speak to the sisters. Absolutely ridiculous. Ummahat al-Mu'mineen, Aisha from the mother, she should have just sat there and talked to the women then, shouldn't she? No Sahabi would have come to ask her anything, because she was there just for the women, wasn't she? What a load of nonsense. This is a cultural problem. And I'll tell you, sisters, that I implied earlier on, is a problem. Our sisters themselves need to sort themselves out first as well. Yeah. Cultural shift needs to happen for them to stand their ground and realize themselves that what they've been taught and what they've been fed in this field is a cultural baggage. It's not right. It's not right. It's chauvinism.
Thank you so much, Dr. Munir, Auntie Sarah, for your comments on that. Next question. So, Dr. Munir, you mentioned at the start that this was a topic of discussion in the 80s as well. So would you say there are any differences or similarities between now and then? And if so, what are they?
Well, I don't know, because I've been told that this is what's being mentioned, whereas in the 80s, we were directly dealing with people saying things like that. To be honest, I don't see any difference. It's people peddling, I think it's the same sources peddling the same thing again, because they've got nowadays also what's not helping sometimes is they've got English-speaking people of, scholars with their saintly robes and saintly appearance, living in a different world, giving this kind of Puritan kind of religion which doesn't exist, and that's not helping, because people access this, and in the end, people just Google, they just go on YouTube, and whatever they come across, they're not able to decipher. And that's one of the dangers with these things. I don't have an answer to it, except that be careful, be critical, think, and think again. In the end, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, part of fatwa, part of a legal ruling and following an opinion, part of each one of us plays a role. In the scholar we choose, before we decide that we're going to follow that opinion, I make a decision that I follow this particular scholar. So we have a role to play in it. And part of it requires us thinking, which many people don't do, as to what's fair. And that's why I mentioned at the beginning, what is the implication of saying that a woman's voice is aura? When you spell it out and break it down, it is so drastic. Anyway, I could go on.
Thank you so much. That's some food for thought there. Okay, next question. So, what is your response to the argument of, which is included in the Quran, this person has said, so, and do not even go close to zina, or do not even go near zina. Should we try and block everything that could lead to zina? So what's your take on that?
Yeah, when Allah says la taqrabu zina, here we've already got evidences from the Quran and Sunnah what that means. And the Sharia has already said that with a non-mahram being in a situation of halwa, which I've said before, yeah, is going near zina. Nothing may happen, but there's a possibility of that. And that the Sharia has spelled out for you. That's not something you and I have made up. Oh, look, that could happen, that could happen. No, Sharia said, this is your limits. Don't be in that situation. Yeah. Sharia has also given that. Now, something, and I mentioned this hadith earlier, and I want to mention it again, because it removes the idea of this puritanical religion and are living in this white robes of purity, and everybody else, they're all involved in sin. The Prophet ﷺ said, Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, Turjuman al-Quran, Habr al-Ummah, the great scholar and the interpreter of the Quran, and the cousin of the Prophet ﷺ, who the Prophet made special dua for, he said, I don't find anything more appropriate in explaining lamam, which is mentioned in the Quran, illa lamam. Whoever stays away from kaba'ira min al-ithm, from the major sin. And Allah SWT says, illa lamam, which means the smaller sin. I don't find anything more appropriate in explaining what the small sins are, except that which Abu Hurairah reported. So it's one Sahabi reporting from another what the Prophet ﷺ said. He said, Inna Allah kataba ala ibn Adam hadzahu min az-zina. Surely Allah has confirmed for every child of Adam their share and portion of zina, of adultery. Adraka dhalika la mahala. He and she will take that portion of it with unable to avoid it. In other words, all human beings, any saint, any alim, any mufti who claims they didn't have a portion of this is a liar. Yeah. La mahala. Their portion of zina, of adultery. Look how serious the word. So it's talking about not actual zina, but the word zina is being used. Yeah. And yet this zina, this kind of zina, is all from sagha'ir, small sin. So what did Prophet ﷺ said? فَزِنَةُ الْعَيْنِ another. The adultery of the eye is the look. وَزِنَةُ اللِّسَانِ النُّطْقِ. And the zina of the tongue is the speaking, the words that you're going to say. Yeah. Which fits with what the Quranic verse I mentioned earlier on to you. فَلَا تَخْضَعْنَ بِالْقَوْلِ. This hadith fits with that. Yeah. وَزِنَةُ اللِّسَانِ النُّطْقِ. وَالنَّفْسُ أو في رواية, this is hadith of Bukhari Muslim, وَالْقَلْبُ يَشْتَهِي وَتَمَنَّى. Yeah. And the person or the heart inside desires and wishes for that zina. وَالْفَرْجُ يُصَدِّقُهُ ذَلِكَ أَوْ يُكَذِّبُهُ. And the private parts either confirm by doing it or they reject it, and the person controls themselves. That is the full zina, isn't it? So anything, so as long as the person yukadhibu dhalik, they reject it, they don't fall into the actual zina, all of that is part of leading to zina. Yeah. All of us will partake something from it. Anybody who says, I've never looked at the opposite sex with desire, yeah, I often say it, is a liar. Yeah. So try and avoid as much as we can, fattaqullaha mastata'tum, in doing that kind of look and desirous talk, desirous touch. Yeah, all that comes under lemon. I hope that answered partly the question.
Thank you so much for that clarification. Okay, next thing I have here. How can we address the dilemma of wanting to give a talk on disability awareness in Islam specifically to both brothers and sisters, even though public speeches in mosques are typically reserved for sisters to give speeches to sisters, and there isn't a male speaker with a disability available to address the brothers directly on this topic? Jazakallah khair.
There isn't a male speaker available, what?
Yeah, I think the issue is they want to specifically give a talk about disability awareness in Islam, but
Right.
there isn't a male available to speak. And at this particular mosque, normally the facilities only allow for a sister to address sisters and then brothers to address brothers, I'm guessing. So I think this person is asking for maybe some advice or some help of how they can get around this issue.
Excuse me for laughing. We got bigger problems than that. Most mosques don't even allow women into the mosque, never mind for salah, which is obligatory. Never mind having a male speaking to males and female speaking to females. Around majority of the mosques, they don't want a woman. They don't want to see the woman in the mosque. They'll close the door. How many sad stories have I heard of sisters traveling and going to a mosque and they don't open the door for them? They say there's no place. Or if they're pushed, really pushed, they provide a little dirty room in the cellar or something, or she has to go to the church to go and do a salah. So we got bigger issues.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. We got bigger issues, which is salah itself.
No, thank you so much for, I guess, highlighting that. It's an issue in my community as well. So
when we've got that ironed out, I'll come and give you an answer to that question you're asking.
Thank you so much.
Because that's not mandatory. The salah, where we have is a first salah, and it is not mandatory for women to attend, but I believe it's recommended. And the 25 times reward, I don't believe it's just for the male. It's for the female as well to attend the mosque. And we can't actually get our sisters to get in a culture of coming to the mosque.
Yeah,
I mean those who are not busy with children or looking after elderly. They've got time.
Absolutely.
So anyway, we've got these things to deal with.
Yeah, I think ISB, we've done a talk on women in mosques specifically. Don't know if there's a recording on the BritIslam YouTube channel. Yes, I think there is. So please do go and check that out if that's something you're interested in. It was a really good talk. Thank you so much.
I've given many khutbahs on that. I will carry on.
It's an issue. Jazakallah. Okay, next question. If you've come across the hadith where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam asks what is best for a woman, and Fatima radiallahu anha replies that the best thing for a woman is that no man sees her and that she sees no man. So this person would be grateful to hear your understanding on that.
This hadith is not authentic. This hadith is not authentic. It is da'if. No further discussion.
Thank you so much. Okay, next question and final question. So I think this is addressing the kind of issue of giving salam again that was brought up earlier. So what if somebody says salam to you in a clearly inappropriate way that is flirty? Is it fine to ignore them in this situation?
Astaghfirullah. How can you even say salam in a flirty way? La ilaha illallah.
Okay. Is anybody
I mean, if somebody says salam and you perhaps you misinterpreted they said in a flirty way, and if they had, just say walaikum assalam and move on. Don't respond in a flirty way back.
Thank you so much for that response.
Saying walaikum assalam is not gonna, suddenly as some people, I have to be very blunt. I mean, some people jump from saying salam and smile, they end up in bed together. I mean, give me a break, man. Wake up. Which world are you living in? They see a woman smiling in the culture here. I mean, this is also a cultural thing, you see. I remember, I don't know if we've got time for this, a young Pakistani chap, or perhaps I shouldn't have mentioned where he came from. he came here, he was new here, and he went to the supermarket, and the girl at the till, as his culture here, of course, she's polite and she's smiling as she's serving him. Yeah, he tried to molest her because he thought her smile meant that she wants to go to bed with him. Astaghfirullah, I mean, how am I supposed to deal with that? So this is a guy who's got marad and illness and disease of his mind and heart. Yeah, that anything like that. This is, you know, so if somebody, and therefore we have got to do a cultural check. And perhaps the sister just smiled and said Salaam alaikum. Yeah, a brother should be thinking she's being flirty because she smiled. Dear, dear. We really need to understand what ma'roof is, what urf is, and what good is.
Thank you so much. And sorry, you've got your hand there.
Sorry?
Sorry, I think Auntie Sarah's got her hand up. No? Okay, no problem, that's fine.
She did put her hand up actually just now. But that was to say go away.
I think.
Oh, it's okay. I froze. I'm so sorry. It froze. Can I just want to say, because I just have heard this from some brothers before. I just wanted to say, you know, if a sister speaks in a certain way, I think you can comment on her speech, but you can't comment on her intention. Intention is hidden and only Allah knows. And I just feel the word flirtatious. It's commenting on an action and an intention. I kind of feel it's transgressing. It's going beyond, because you're judging someone's action, but you're judging their intention. You could say that someone spoke too softly. You can describe the speech, but to call it flirtatious is actually judging someone's intention. And some women are just softer than others. And I just think we just have to be very careful, vice versa as well, that we don't label people. And on that topic, I know my husband, you know, he says he's really reticent to say salam to women now because of the amount of times he said salam, they've not said wa alaikum salam. And then he becomes conscious that he's being misunderstood when he says salam. So I think we just need to just be much more direct and not be misinterpreting so much.
Quite right. And you see, that's where it goes back to. And that's why these people with their extreme views of haram and haram and being tradition, I've heard people so-called that people follow as imams. They say a woman, she's showing a face, she's flirtatious because she's showing a face, she's having it covered. Or she's a prostitute. She's showing a few flicks of her hair came out from under a scarf. Yeah, that she's flirtatious. I mean, where do you want to go with that? It's just, the mind boggles. Yeah, it's just, I have no words for it. It's so ridiculous. And these people sit there as imams giving advice. There's no usul, there's no rules of jurisprudence being taken. It's just total emotion. Yeah, there's no scholarship.
Thank you so much for those comments. Are there any final questions on the topic of kind of female speakers specifically? I've had one or two other questions that are on different topics, so I'm hesitant to put those forward, but has anybody got any other questions? Auntie, oh, your hand was up again for a second?
Yeah, it's it. Yeah. So I just want to, I'm sorry if you've already responded, Brother Munir, on this, but just to clarify, just because this question's come from quite a few people. If an Islamic society were to say, if we were to get a female speaker, we cannot assess and we cannot guarantee that no negative thoughts and desires would arise in the audience, particularly should she not follow our understanding of what obligatory dress is. Let's put the dress issue aside. Let's say that she is dressed modestly according to the mainstream. What she says can be equally said by a brother. So do we really need a sister when we cannot measure what the negative impact might be? And should there be negative impact, any desire, which you've described as lamam, should that occur, it falls on our shoulders as organizers, and we don't want to take that responsibility.
And you don't take the responsibility. It's nonsense. It's nonsense to think like that, because lamam is individually judged, not judged as an organization or people who are organizing, that you put a sister there and you're causing lamam to happen in the hearts of people, either because they're hearing a voice or they've seen a sister. Yeah, look at the society we're living in. It's all around us anyway. Why is it that there we? So this is just totally misplaced. Yeah, it is important that a sister, and it shouldn't be looked at. Why is it that a brother can stand there and give a talk? Is it not possible that the sisters and females in the audience are looking at this brother and can also have a desirous feeling towards? Do they not have? This is another problem. Many men think that only men in Islam have sexual motivation, and the women are like, just blank slates. They don't have any emotions. Is it not possible that the women in the audience have also got feelings and desires, things when they're looking at the male speaking at the podium? Of course, it is possible. So you'll be held responsible for that as well.
Thank you so much for those comments. Any final questions? We've got a couple of minutes.
Have we?
Yeah, we've got till 1:15, I believe. Is that right, Auntie?
All right, my watch is forward ahead.
Okay, so I've got one here. Okay. What if inviting a woman who doesn't follow hijab, I guess this has maybe kind of been addressed, but what if inviting a woman who doesn't follow hijab to give an informative talk with or without a male potential replacement?
Well, I think it's very. I mean, we don't normally look at it. We get a sister because she's got expertise in a particular field, and we know of her, and that's going to be very beneficial. In the end, as I said, the khimar or covering of a head is left between her and Allah. We're not there to judge, and I believe, even though it's fard to wear the khimar, I believe it's from the sagair as well, not to cover the head. It's not from the kabair, which is like other parts of the body and the nakedness of other parts of the body. And it's not the only basis on which to decide. Yeah, let's get a male in instead. It may be a factor. But it cannot be generalized. I wouldn't like to rule out the expertise of a Muslim sister coming to give a talk. I remember this is a Muslim sister. Non-Muslim ulama, many were of the opinion, there's khilaf on it, that looking at dhimmis and non-Muslims, because the khimar and the dress didn't come upon them, and you were interacting in society where there's Muslims and non-Muslims, if they stand up at a podium and give a talk, you don't expect them to wear a khimar, and they might have expertise in a particular field, and as they do in universities and schools, they're teachers, etc. So in that situation, as a majority of scholars said, it's fine, it's allowed for them to do that, and for you to look without desire again, and try and avoid and control the desire.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, often I get confused because people seem to be okay with female lecturers for university, but then when it comes to ISOC, there's an issue. So yeah, thank you so much for addressing that. 2 minutes. Any last questions before I go through just the upcoming events one more time? Anyone want to put their hand up and mics on or anything?
Could I ask one? I don't want to type it out. Can I just ask in voice?
Go for it, Nabila.
So the reason I have a lot of debates with my mum about this, and the reason she says that you need to be like extra vigilant when you're doing something in an Islamic space is because like it's an Islamic space, it's supposed to be holy. Like that's why our mosques, they don't allow women. Well, it's not they don't allow women, they don't really want women to come, because they're like, we need to be extra holy and be extra avoiding mixing. And with the ISOC, it's the same thing. Like, we're an ISOC, like this is an Islamic society, like this is not just some like random thing, it's like Islamic. We need to preserve the holiness. What's your response to that?
What is Islamic? You might give the mosque opinion. The Prophet ﷺ, the companions, men and women prayed in the same hall. without a screen. Wasn't that Islamic? Or are they more Islamic nowadays? Yeah. So it's this whole idea of this holiness in Islam. Islam is something's disappeared or something disappeared. Yeah, it's this concept, this idea of this purely Islamic, etc. If you're doing something un-Islamic, yeah, it depends on the level of that. All un-Islamic things are not at the same level of haram, and there will be individuals, yeah. So girls who you're running an Islamic society university, yeah, girls who are interested who come without khimar because they're not following Islam, either they're non-Muslims or they're Muslimas who've never been taught, they hardly know anything about Islam. They want to come in your space, you're going to say this is Islamic. We only allow certain kind of, I mean, what is this? Absolute nonsense.
Thank you so much.
It's that puritanical idea of Islam. Oh, we're very pure. We don't look at anything. We never do this. We never do that. Prophet ﷺ said, Allah says, if the whole of human beings were to become sinless, He would destroy them all and replace them with those who commit sin and do tawbah, because Allah loves tawbah. So don't think yourselves as being so Islamic.
Thank you so much, Dr. Munir, for your time and answering all of those questions. And thank you to everybody who sent in questions as well and attended today. We really, really appreciate your time, Dr. Munir. And yeah, that's about it from me. So again, thank you so much, Dr. Munir, and everybody that attended. And I hope you all enjoy the rest of your evening.
Barakallahu fikum. Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakum Allahu khair. Assalamu alaikum.